Hi everyone, thank you a lot for joining the session. My name is Alina, I work in JetBrains, and I'm a part of our security team with this beautiful yet posh name of Security Champions. By the way, it's not something I came up with, so it's like a real title, but whatever. Today we're going to talk a lot about authentication flows, about the authentication on native clients, how we can hack it, how we can defend it, and I also introduce OAuth 2.0 extension, which is called PKCE, and we'll show how it protects the native clients. Also, please note that today, as we're going to talk a lot about OAuth 2.0, sometimes, just for the matter of convenience, I'm going to say OAuth, so please note that by it I always mean OAuth 2.0. And let's begin. Or not. For some reason, my clicker is not working. I'm sorry for this technical issue. Can we do something with it? Ah, perfect. Okay, I would like to start with a brief introduction of the OAuth 2.0 flows itself. And I'm pretty sure that a lot of you are already familiar with this, but I want everyone to be just right on the same page here. And also, today I'm going to show a lot of attack scenarios, and in those attack scenarios, details really do matter. So please pay attention to this a bit boring part of OAuth flows introduction. OAuth 2.0 is a federated authentication mechanism which kind of conquered its niche. Of course, there are other ways of provided federated authentication, but they would be way less generic. So if you take SAML protocol, for example, it would be way more enterprise-oriented. So OAuth 2.0 aims to establish a trusted relationship between the resource owner, who is typically the user, the client application seeking access, the authorization server, and the server holding the resources. Okay, when the user wants to authorize a certain client application, it makes a request to the access basically an application and get redirected to the consent form and authentication form. Once the user grants consent, the authorization server issues a token, and then this token could be exchanged for the resources, could be used to get access to the resources. And the killer feature here is the lifespan of the access token. Because do you actually remember when was the last time you changed the password of your Google account or something? Even if you follow best practices, probably that was some time ago. Unlike this, access token lives for a really short period of time. It could be half an hour, which really lowers the attack surface. Also, please note that each client application has a unique client ID, and it should be registered on our server in advance in order for the flow to be successful. Also, according to the specifications, all the communication in OAuth is happening only over secure connection, such as TLS only. And now I want to stop in details on authorization code flow. There are several possible flows for OAuth, but this one is a particular interest for today's talk. Later we will see why. And in this flow, the user wants to authorize app and access the app, and then the application makes a request to the authorization point of the OAuth server. After this, the user got redirected to the authentication form, consent form. You've probably seen dozens of times those annoying windows do you grant permissions for app IBC to access XYZ? And once the user grants the consent, we could issue the access code. And access code is issued to the client application, and then the client application exchanges it to the access token, and then this token can be used for the access to the resources. And now we want to focus more specifically on this particular part, which is responsible for the issuing OAuth code and exchanging it to the token. And the first logical question that probably arises here is, why the hell so complicated? Why we need this whole code thing? Why can't we just directly get an access token? And the reason is pretty straightforward. The thing is, if you pay attention to arrows 2, 3, and 6, you would notice that this logic is happening over HTTP redirects. And in browser, there are not that many ways to keep anything secret. So, well, okay, technically, I could add the token to URL, and it will survive the redirects. But any proxy or reverse proxy will happily write all the information to logs. Anyone that has access to those logs will be able to see all the information, which is definitely not that we want. An alternative could be headers, but the situation would be absolutely the same there, so the same visibility problem. Therefore, we need a one-time issued OAuth code which later is exchanged to access token. By the way, that has even shorter lifespan, which is even more lowers down the attack surface. And the reason why it works is because this exchange of code to token usually happens on a request from backend to backend. So browser is not involved here, no redirects are involved here. And it's usually quite clear in which network, so backend's allocated, so we are pretty safe here. And at this point, how would our server actually know where to redirect back the OAuth code or token? Because, well, technically, I can construct a certain URL that would impersonate my client application, and let's say instruct the OAuth server to return the code or token to my personal server. For example, there are no signs on steps 2, 3, and 6, so like unlike SAML, for example, again. And we are not protected from this. Therefore, on our server, we need to hold a certain list of allowed addresses where it would be valid to return the OAuth code and OAuth token. And now let's talk a bit more in details how those redirect URIs look and how they work. So basically, some platforms allow to override specific URL patterns in order to launch an application instead of a normal browser. Another option would be to use custom URL schemes. And the most popular options for this would be using reversed domains. So for example, if you are in control of domain appexample.com, then you reverse it as com.example.app, and you could use it as a custom scheme. Another option would be to dynamically generate a certain ID for an app instance. For example, Facebook does it. So we kind of aim to generate a unique custom scheme for every app instance. In this scenario, a scheme such as my app wouldn't work, because here, and we will see more in detail why, we aim to make it as unique as possible. So definitely, like, this name wouldn't be as unique as we need it. Also note that it's a completely valid functionality which is required for normal applications communications. But the limitation of this would be the following. Actually, more than one app can actually register itself as a custom scheme handler for the very same scheme. So sometimes it's even a perfectly valid flow when, for example, applications split responsibility. So one app makes authorization request, another one handles the OAuth code, OAuth token. Completely valid scenario. However, later, we will see how this limitation could become a perfect surface for an attack. Also, when we typically want to register our app as a custom scheme handler, we typically interact with the operating system components, configuration files, and stuff like this. And in Android, that would be the Android manifest files. So we just need to add like a couple of lines of code there. For Android, that would be, for iPhone, that would be tweaking the Xcode settings. So it's pretty straightforward. And how does PKCE fit in this whole scheme? So basically, PKCE stands for Proof Key for Code Exchange. It's an extension for OAuth 2.0 flows. And initially, it was designed to protect native clients, to enhance the security of code grants for native clients. And it was designed to mitigate the authorization code interception attack. And now we will see how this attack works and why this mitigation was needed. Okay, in this attack, we have the following setup. We have the user, we have an user device, we have our server, and we have a legitimate app which is using OAuth 2.0 flows, more specifically code grant flow. And let's say we managed to install an evil application, and it registered itself as a handler for the very same custom scheme as a good app. All right, let's begin the flow. And the user wants to authorize the app. It accesses the app makes authorization request, which is then get forwarded to the OAuth server. All good so far. Then it grants consent. So now we can safely issue the OAuth code. The code is issued. And now it would be really hard to determine which application actually received this code. Because, well, like, it depends on the platform, depends on the operating system, but it's completely valid scenarios that now, instead of a good app, an evil application will receive this OAuth code. And what happens next? Well, we make a request to our server, we provide the code, we exchange it to token, boom, we got the resources. And actually, you could stop me at this moment saying like, yeah, okay, we got the code, but can we actually do something without knowing the client credentials here? Because we still need the client ID in order to get the resources. But what if I actually tell you that we can easily get this too? Because chances are that if you are developing a native application such as mobile app or a single-page app, you would be using the same client ID for all the instances of your application. And those kind of apps, they are known as public clients. And in those kind of clients, you can't build any logic by relying on client ID or client secret. You can't make sure those ones are kept secret. So it's like strictly not advisable to perform any actions by trusting like that the parameters are kept safe. So in this case, in a setup when you have a public client and using OAuth 2.0 authorization code grant flow, some imposter might be generating and using access tokens without you even knowing this. Sounds not fun. We have to do something with this. And the main idea behind PKCE is the so-called proof of possession. Basically, the main idea is simple. We need to bind together the client ID and the code that was issued. So this way, when the client ID presents the code to the server in order to exchange it for a token, we somehow give a proof that this code is totally legitimate and actually belongs to our application. And how it's performed. So first of all, on the client side of the application, we generate a 32-bit sequence number, which is an output of random numbers generator. It's crucial to make sure this value is kept secret, and it's hard to predict it. It's a core part of this flow. After that, it gets base64 encoded, and we receive the so-called value of code verifier, which is then hashed using a code challenge method. I would say in 80% cases that would be SHA-256, the most popular option. Then this new sequence got base64 encoded again. Boom, we receive the code challenge value. So now we have 3 new values, and we're going to use it when making requests. First of all, when we make the very first request to the authorization server, we include the code challenge and code challenge method in it. After this, part of the flow is performed, and when the server is ready to issue an auth code, it records the code client ID alongside with the challenge and challenge method. It will be used later. When we make a second request to exchange the code to token, we also include the code verifier value in it. And then it's as simple as this. Basically, server already knows the code challenge and code challenge method. So now we hash and encode the code verifier compared to code challenge, and if it's a match, only then we will issue an access token. So this way, we somehow bind together the client application and the issued auth code and mitigate the previous attack. So yeah, that's all. Basically, enemy is defeated. We can go home. I'm sorry. Basically, let's first discuss the limitations of this approach. Let me introduce you the PKCE bypass via app impersonation attack. So in this attack, we have a similar scenario. We have the end-user device. We have a good app, again, using OAuth 2.0 flows. We have an auth server, and we managed to steal the client ID and install a malicious app, which registered itself as a custom scheme handler for the same custom URI scheme. Now, in this attack, the evil application makes authorization request, and now it includes code challenge and code challenge method alongside. It generates it itself. It's important. And then those request is forwarded. Again, same old OAuth flow. We grant the code. Code is handled to the evil app. And now, when we want to exchange the code to token, we include the code verifier here. And nothing stops us from doing this because it was evil app who generated the code challenge and code challenge method. So now we can easily provide the code verifier. It's not a problem. And we are in again. So does it basically mean that PKCE is no help here? That basically that all was pointless and that we don't need this whole scheme at all? Well, true, but not really. So for this attack to be successful, we need to fulfill several very important requirements. First of all, as we mentioned before, we need to register the evil app as a handler for the same custom scheme. Okay, doable. Second, we need to steal the client ID. In case the client ID is not generated per application instance, it would be a bit harder because that would involve some traffic sniffing. It would be as easy as for public clients, so might be a bit challenging. But now, what is the first thing that catches your eye if you compare those two attacks. So the most obvious thing here is the presence of user. So in first attack, that was a user who initiated the whole process, who initiated the flow, who triggered the app. And in this scenario, you at least kind of expect to see those like annoying windows with asking you to give permissions, to grant consent and stuff like this. But in second attack, the evil app initiated the flow. So basically, due to invention of PKCE, we introduce one more complicated step to this flow. We need to somehow trick the user to grant permissions for this malicious app. And it will require us to use some phishing techniques or social engineering techniques or whatever, but this step wouldn't be needed without PKCE. So yeah, that's the most important part. And talking about ways of mitigation, okay, like ideally, in ideal world, of course, each application should use only permissions that it needs, like preferably read-only access and stuff like this. But it kind of depends on the type of native app, because if you talk about mobiles, then you could use the claim HTTPS schemes via HTTPS callback URL, and it would be backed by the universal links on iOS and app links on Android. The main idea behind this is quite simple. Basically, each application owner should give proof that it actually owns this domain. It's performed via a deep linking process, and it kind of ensures that only legitimate apps receive the codes. But on desktops, the situation is a bit worse, because they allow usages only of private URI schemes and loopback callback URLs. And it's like generally considered that, well, we rely a bit more on user for those cases, because it's kind of believed that if you manage to install a malicious app on your laptop, probably like you have way deeper problems than just authentication, and yeah, probably it's way worse for you. Of course, there are several best practices regarding this. So for example, it's advised to use stores that require code signing, for example, at least you know who the publisher is. But generally speaking, yeah, we mostly rely on user in this case, because not much we could do in this situation. Okay, let's talk for a moment on user agents here. Basically, there are two major types of user agents. The one is external, and the other one is embedded. And the external one is typically the device-native browser with a separate security context, while embedded one targeted to rendering the web content inside the application itself. And when we talk about the user agents, it's always a matter of trade-off, because on one hand, embedded user agents provide really nice UX, and user just stays in the app. On the other hand, it's completely useless in terms of security, because it violates the principle of least privilege. When we use the embedded user agents, they do have access to user full credentials profile, not only like this small part that was intended for it, which is a violation of one of the core principles. So when we talk about best practices, it's an intermediate best practices for what I've just shown. First of all, it's important to note that for the refresh tokens, if you're using it, you better use it with PKCE. And the refresh token should be generated every time an access token is generated. So it's basically meaning that you have to use the refresh token rotation. Another option would be, again, about these user agents. As I said, it's better not to use embedded user agents in native applications. And what is even more is that some OAuth servers might take actions to block and like detect and block the requests which were made from such agents. Also, ideally, of course, client ID and client secret should be different per app instance. Otherwise, it would be really easy to get the client ID. This way, at least, it would require some traffic sniffing. And yeah, the last one, there are several flows in OAuth, and some of them allow us to authorize access without even asking for user consent. Such flows should never be used in native apps, even when you use PKCE. Okay, I hope you're not tired yet, because now we are getting to a bit more complicated scenarios, which would involve some traffic sniffing, some eavesdropping, and that will require a bit of more pre-work. They're a bit more complicated, but still, in my mind, more interesting. Actually, when I was testing a couple of apps and I discovered those holes myself, I was pretty surprised, because to me, they seemed like so untidy. I couldn't even believe like how you could leave a hole like this. Like it's so obvious. But then like I did a small research why actually those holes occur, and yeah, it kind of made sense. So let's go to this. Let me introduce you PKCE downgrade attack. And in this attack, we have kind of similar scenario. We have a user, we have a client device, we have our server. We managed to install evil application, which registered itself as a handler for the same custom scheme. Also, we managed to steal the client ID. All right, the user wants to authorize the app, make the flow, and application makes a authorization request to the server. This time, developers did their homework. They're using PKCE, so they include the code challenge and code challenge method in the request. All right, but what if in the same network there is an attacker who is able to do traffic sniffing and who is able to completely remove code challenge and code challenge method from the request? Again, this part of the attack is probably the most complicated one. There are several papers which describe how exactly you could do this, and it requires some skill, effort, and time, but still, that's possible. I don't want to get like into like very detailed description of this particular part. Like there are some references that I could share afterwards. You remove all the signs of PKCE from the request. Request is preceded to the OAuth server, and at this point, even if our server supports PKCE, it sees the incoming request, and it sees literally no signs of PKCE, and thinks like, yeah, okay, probably client doesn't support it. Okay, fine. And it issues, like, no check for the code challenge, and it issues the OAuth code, which is then forwarded to the evil application, and then when the evil application tries to exchange it for the token, it's no problem, because our server already knows that basically it's no PKCE. There is no need to check for the code verifier. We can just proceed and give the token. Again, bam, we are in. But what is even more interesting in that there is another alternative of this attack, which is even, like, I don't know, even more unreal. Because in an alternative scenario, you have like the very same setup. The request is made, you include code challenge, you include code challenge method. And basically, the trickiest part for attacker would be to guess this value, which is ABC. It's a value of code verifier. It should be hardly guessable, and it's like the most complicated part of this. But what we do, instead, again, in the same network, we intercept this request. We save the value of code challenge, like the whole value of code challenge, and we replace the method to plain. Remember, in the very beginning, I said, like, in 90% cases, that would be SHA-256. But still, some applications do support different kinds of code challenge method, and PKCE supports different kinds of code challenge method. So some of them still require this code challenge method to be plain. And in this case, okay, we replace the method to plain. We proceed with the request. The OAuth server records the code challenge and client ID. All good. Issues the code. Code is intercepted. And then here, just follow the hands. Basically now, nothing stops you from sending the code verifier as a code challenge, because you don't need to guess the ABC anymore. It's as easy as this. You just make the code verifier equal to code challenge, and then as our server already recorded the method as plain, well, it's totally valid. Again, you are in. But what is even worse in those kind of attack is that some authorization servers even use this one as a default fallback method. So imagine, like here, you don't even need to replace it with plain. You just leave it as is, record code challenge, and then when you send code verifier equal to code challenge, first it tries to use a valid code challenge method, but then when it fails, obviously, it thinks like, okay, if it failed, maybe we should try plain. It tries plain, of course, it's a match, we are in again. And to me, like, that's the most untidy part, because authorization server, if it supports PKCE, it should make use of it. It should enforce, like, checking it, but not just downgrading to methods without PKCE. So following those attacks, the best practices are the following. The first one is obvious. Enforce using PKCE. Second one, if you're developing a client and if for some reason you need to use plain, it would be like very, very rare scenario. It's like very small percentages of apps that really do need this. Please consider using other security techniques apart from PKCE, maybe like some additional methods of protection. Otherwise, if it's not your case, never use plain. And a kind of like a follow-up practice is that if you see an error, somehow something like, I don't know, this type of code challenge method is not supported, never downgrade to plain, because there might be some person residing in your network, some man in the middle, which is trying to perform the downgrade attack. Okay, so in the course of the last several years, PKCE kind of became a standard for the protection of native clients, and even more, it developed into web applications, but of course, like the major point of interest is native clients. And it proved itself to be highly beneficial for security of OAuth flows. It got widely adopted, all major providers support it, and it's really beneficial to use it as it provides an additional layer of protection. But of course, despite PKCE made a huge contribution to the security of native clients, to the defense mechanisms of native clients, even it can't become a silver bullet. So it's always worth it to double check if PKCE covers all your scenarios, if you maybe need to use anything else apart from this, and not just completely rely on one mechanism, which is kind of like general security rule that you have to double check everything always. And now we kind of talked about the present state, about the current best practices, but what about future? And of course, the recent hype is the passkeys. And yeah, I got recently an interesting question that I would like to share with you. And it's kind of obvious, but do passkeys replace OAuth? Well, first of all, what are the passkeys? Passkeys basically are designed to improve the flow for the authentication of the users, to simplify the process, to make it smoother. It basically uses the security features of your devices, such as Touch ID, Face ID, etc. But the thing is that passkeys can't replace OAuth because they have like different responsibilities. The major point to use OAuth is not for user authentication. If you're using OAuth for user authentication, probably you should reconsider your techniques because it's not its major goal. OAuth's major goal is to provide all those authorization flows which could help you authorize the application. And passkeys simply weren't designed for this. So they have different goal, different task. Therefore, passkeys and OAuth 2.0 flows work great together because, well, passkey simplifies this part of user authentication, OAuth do the rest. So the short answer would be no. And yeah, today I showed you several attack and defense scenarios. We tried to break the authentication mechanism, we tried to defend it. And probably the main key takeaway that I want you to have from this talk is that the truth is always somewhere in between. And in this particular area, the balance is highly important. Because, well, of course, you can try to run and urgently fix everything once you hear about a new attack, but in real life, some of them are hardly reproducible. Some of them require enormous amount of time and effort to be actually executed, and not all of them are actually applicable. But on the other hand, it's always people that will try to break the system. It's always people that try to find new holes, new small inconsistencies, and of course it's important to keep an eye on security of your application. But it might be a bit posh to say, but of course no system is fully secure, and we can't do anything with this. It's like an ending game when ones could try all the time to attack, to find new holes, to find new vulnerabilities, and others try to always defend it. And it's an endless game, and we could do nothing with this. It's part of the fun part of the game. But what we could do is just gradually try to make our system better. Thank you.
Okay, any questions?
Yes, thank you for the talk. I have been using OAuth for a while, but using web. So for me, the native client part is very unknown. Mm-hmm. I have a question regarding, I think it was the first or the second scenario of the PKCE attack, when the evil app got the code verified. I didn't get it how the evil app took it. Yeah, just the very first ones. Yeah, sorry.
This one, right?
Yes, exactly. Can you maybe
code verifier?
Yes. So how the evil app got the code verified?
Yeah, sure. Basically, in this flow, usually, like in the previous attacks, for example, it was user who wanted to authorize a good app, right? But in this attack, the evil application initiated the flow. So evil app itself created the code challenge and code challenge method. And if you know those values, if you created it yourself, of course you know the code verifier.
Yeah, exactly. So the code verifier is provided by the evil app.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Okay. Just let me take a picture of this.
Sure. Thank you for the question.
Yeah. Thank you.
Hello.
Hi.
Sorry if it's a weird question. Maybe I just missed that in the presentation. But you spent some time talking about how plain seems to be a bit unsafe, and to me it feels like it should be deprecated because it allows us to do some bypassing. So, is there any reason why it's not? Do you maybe know?
Yeah, thank you for the question. It's a really good one. It's the same question I asked myself, actually. Why it's still not deprecated? Why you still support it? And the answer was pretty vague, actually, because I checked the RFCs, I checked the specifications, and all they mentioned is basically that some devices still need it, like some specific class of devices. But honestly, yeah, in my mind, they should deprecate it. I don't see any strong reason why you can't do this, apart from that they mentioned that there are still some use cases while someone might need it. But, you know, probably in the future they should reconsider again its decision. Thank you.
Yes, another question regarding in native apps. Because if I'm not mistaken, sometimes you can do the code exchange not only using the code client ID, but also the client secret, right? Mm-hmm. And I guess that needs to happen in a safe channel, right? Because you are like sending the client secret. We are not sending the client secret here because between the device and the out server is like a no secure channel. Someone can intercept it, or what is the reason there is no like this way to get it?
Yeah, I mean, like, of course, you could include the client secret. It's also part of the credentials, client credentials, perfectly fine. The thing is, like, again, if you're talking about public clients, you can't rely on secrets. So it's kind of the same situation. Of course, if ID and secret are generated per application instance, that would be quite hard because connection, like the HTTP redirects, they should be over protected connections, such as TLS. So you would need to use some traffic sniffing and some advanced techniques to get to this, and it's like really hardly doable. But in case, again, it's a public client, so this one is not generated per app instance, but like kind of hard-coded, honestly. Then you can't rely on this.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, all right. Thanks for your talk. I actually want to ask like a very short and simple question about the. You said that some servers they have a fallback for plain method, and I'm as a backend developer. I'm kind of now developing the validation system, and I actually just want to ask: is it like a common ignorance to use like a plain method for the fallback, or just like I don't know? I just if I was developing such a system, I would never use like the plain fallback and so on. And I just maybe you know the reasons why they simplify the method and no like force everyone to use SHA-256 and so on. Like, thanks.
Yeah, thank you. It's a good question actually, because to me that's why I said like in the beginning that I was surprised to actually discover this, because in my mind also they shouldn't do this as a fallback because it's like very easy way to get abused in this sense. I think it kind of has some maybe historical reasons in a way why like for some time ago it should be required but not anymore. And again, like I also have lots of questions to the current specification because, in my mind, they should like strictly prohibit this. Like now, like mostly when we develop something, we rely on the RFC specifications because they describe these best practices. And in RFC, it's now not prohibited to use it as a fallback. So I would say if you're using like common sense, you should prohibit it. But like according to the specification, it's not prohibited right now. I don't know. Again, I think they should reconsider it, but maybe they have their own reasons.
Maybe another weird question. Since the post body and HTTPS requests are encrypted, why don't we send, like, why is the specification sending these over as a query param, not in the body? So then interception would be harder, right? Or did I get it wrong?
No. I mean, here still, you could attach it to your request. You could attach it to the URL itself. You could attach it to headers, to whatever you see. But it still could be visible. And like, for example, if you got access to access logs, for example, where all the information is recorded by, I don't know, proxy or something like this, it still would be visible, even if it's even if it's somehow over TLS here.
But as far as I know, the body of a post request is encrypted by the public key of the client, and only the server can decrypt it, right? So how can it be intercepted?
Wait, let me think. Well, I mean, you could use public network in this sense. In case, like, you can't control in which network your client, like, is using its application, and in case a user does some unsafe actions, or in case it's public networks or stuff like this, it would be visible.
Thank you.
Yeah, again, like if you talk about backend communication, backend about the requests, then in this scenario we're quite sure in what networks those backends are located, and we're quite sure that we are in control of those requests. But when the browser, when the HTTP redirects are involved, we are not always in control of this. So that's the main difference, like what we exactly control and what we can't always control.
I think I have the final question. While you're right in terms of OAuth protocol that it could be used for authorization purposes, many people are using still it for authentication stuff. In your opinion, is it a good idea to start using passkeys instead of OAuth for authentication purposes for the application we are planning to develop or we will develop?
I mean, I see no problem in doing this, because initially OAuth, well, again, it's not its major goal to be used for authentication. It's good for a bit of other reasons, other goals. So as a replacement for OAuth, exactly about the part of authentication, I see no problem. I think it's a good one, but of course not for the whole flow.
Okay. Any more questions? Then thank you again for your talk.
Thank you.